Welcome to Seymour from the Front Pew podcast, coming to you from the broadcast studio at Seymour First Baptist Church in Seymour, Tennessee, and featuring thoughts and discussions around loving God, loving others, making disciples, and living the life. I am your host, Tiger Brooks, and now, on to the podcast. It's funny when you take a break and then you come back and I've got to reorient myself to all the controls and whatnot. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Living the dream.
Well,
Hey, listen.
we are here for a special episode of this podcast as we talk about centrifuge and infuge camps in general. We just returned from the kids camp, and the student camp was just a couple weeks ago. And we wanted to kind of just recap those a little bit, kind of give an overview as to why we think that that's a valuable part of what we do here at Seymour First Baptist Church, and then kind of relate some stories from both of those weeks, and maybe look to the future as to what that may look like for us moving forward in beginning next summer. But Jason, why don't you start off and just kind of tell us a little bit? You are Lifeway's got to give you some sort of a reward, an award in the future, because you may, I don't know that anybody's got more camps under their belt than you do.
I don't know. There's some pretty old guys out there. There's a few of them that been doing it for a while.
So why camp?
So camp, for us has always been, there's always something different every year that you kind of look for in what we do is FUGE Camp. Some people call it FUGE Camp. It's not FUGE. It is FUGE Camp, F-U-G-E. But we go to, Infuge is typically what we go to. Again, like you said, they have Centrifuge. Centrifuge is more discipleship-based, where Infuge is more missions-based. Infuge stands for missions. So, as far as leading groups, I've led 19 at this point, and so far I've only done one of those 19 has been a centrifuge. So they've all been infuge, and it's always looking towards the fact of getting our students exposed to missions on a small scale, so to speak. We're going out into the communities, and one of the things I love about Infuge, and we go somewhere different every year. Now, sometimes they'll repeat and they'll come back around, but we go somewhere different every year because there are also different kinds of missions depending on where you're going. Mm-hmm. Rural areas as opposed to urban areas, all kinds of things that you're going to get as you're going to see. And I like having our students exposed to all of that. Because you never know what God is going to use to hit the heart of a student to say, hey, this is what I have in store for you in the future. Part of it is that it begins to start to whet the appetite of our students for missions. But it is done within a camp atmosphere. And so on top of whetting the appetite for missions, there is also very much, and I think, for Sean and I both, one of the things that's at the forefront of camp and what we're trying to accomplish is relationship building, building up the students to develop leadership within the group, and just all of that taking place within the life of just our group in general. One
thing that, and I don't want to cut you off, but just to add, I think it would be important right here to help people understand why it's called centrifuge. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, but back in my day when we started going, and they began centrifuge because if you don't know what a centrifuge is, it is an apparatus that's used in a lab to spin these things, whatever you're working with, you spin it out into its integral parts, and then it can come back together again. And so very much like that, when you get to FUGE Camp, whether it's centrifuge, infuge, the model is typically your group goes there, and then they're spun out into different tracks where they are really forced to meet new people and build relationships with people they've never met, which really kind of, and that may sound scary to some of you parents out there and some of the kids, but really it helps build confidence in a kid to where when every year you meet new people in school, and we as Christians are supposed to engage our community for the gospel. And so if you don't really get over the fear of meeting new people and in learning the social skills to be able to build relationships and talk to people and find new friends, then it's very difficult for us to live out the gospel. So Centrifuge really is a place where you can take your kids and you can give them, within a very protected environment, opportunities to develop those skills. Is that a fairly good
Yeah, very much
synopsis?
so. And typically, like you said, Centrifuge and Infuge are, we do that. We are going, the camp we had this year was a little bit smaller, less than 200, I think we had there. Typically, they're 400 plus kids and adults present for each camp. And so, usually we are divided. This year, we actually had a different dynamic. This year, our group was the only group going that wanted to do Infuge. The other two churches that were doing, quote-unquote, Infuge, they were doing Infuge with your church, which means they were not going to divide out. And so what that meant is that our group ended up staying with just our church, and we did not get broken up. I think in the long run, I think that ended up being a blessing for us in disguise as far as... And particularly, Sean was on the PCY track, so he can speak more to the PCY track. But the track that I went out with was beach evangelism, and I think it would have been good had we been with other church groups and other students mixed in with the group. But I do think the natural reality of that track, our students were having to really break through a lot of comfort zones, and our adults for that matter, breaking through the comfort zone of walking down. Really, we walked on the kind of the boardwalk of the beach as well as on the shore of the beach, and talking to people, handing them cards, telling them Jesus loves them, basically saying, how can we pray for you today? That is very nerve-wracking. And so breaking down those barriers, I think some of our students would have been more leery of doing that had they been with students that they didn't know.
Right.
But because they knew all of our group, and it was basically just our group together, it was almost the sense that they were able to build each other up, to encourage one another, and they kind of had that camaraderie to say, no, this is what we're here for. This is what we're going to do. And I don't know what you kind of, we hadn't really talked about PCY as much and what you saw there, but I think it was a blessing on this side.
Tell them what PCY stands for.
Painting, construction, and yard work, which I will admit, growing up, I never signed up for PCY. And so I got thrown in there with them, and it was great. I will say one thing that Cameron and I both noticed is like the work ethic of our students is crazy.
Yeah.
At our previous church, it was like constantly having to beat kids to get them to do something. But here we were having
not literally,
but here it was like we were having to like force them to stop and
slow down,
get water and breathe for a second. So we weren't, because it was hot while we were there. And so that was really, really cool to see. But on my side, with it being FUGE with church, it helped me have more opportunity to connect. I've only been here 6 months.
Yeah.
And so it gave Cameron and I both a lot of opportunity to connect with the students and have a lot of one-on-one time with them as we were kind of going about doing different projects and things that are sites that probably wouldn't have had those opportunities if it was something we were mixed and we had a bunch of different kids and that kind of thing. So
yeah, very cool. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor for what the student side of camps are about. You want to talk about a little bit about the kids now?
We'll do that one on another one.
Okay, different one. Okay, we'll stick with student camps now. Okay, so yes, I've been on a few of these myself, and there's always some funny stuff that happens. Some good stuff happens. God things that happen that are very beautiful, but also there's crazy antics that happen. So why don't you tell us a few stories?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So this happened whenever I was a student, and so that was a student under Jason. We had two guys in the dorm room, and I don't know why, but for some reason they were on a different floor.
Different floor, yeah.
All of our group was together, and for whatever reason we had one room on this other floor, and they got put in that room. And so Jason does not do pranks. I think we've told that story of why we don't do pranks, because it escalated way further. I was there. I was not partaking in it, but it was there, and it went way farther than it should have. But this prank was, I think, is the best prank I've ever seen at camp. And so what happened is they had went to bed, and the one boy woke up middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, and somehow collected all of the other kids' gadgets that had time on it, watch, cell phone, alarm clock, gathered them all and changed the time on everything. And so then he woke the kid up and was like, we're late, we've got to get breakfast, like we'll hurry up, get in the shower, let's go. The kid wakes up, oh gosh, and he runs in, gets in the shower. When he gets in the shower, he gets all of his stuff back, changes the time to the original time, and goes back to sleep.
Oh, so my word.
The kid comes out of the shower and he's like, what are you doing? We've got to go. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's 3 a.m. And the best prank ever. I mean, that's hilarious.
That's a lot of effort.
Yes, it was.
He came to the boy that got the prank on him. He came to me. Like I said, I don't do pranks.
Yes.
Typically, like, we don't do these at all. And the boy came to me.
But I've heard a lot of prank stories from somebody that never does pranks.
Yeah, I know. It's trying to keep the reins on him as best you can. But he came to me that morning upset. He was like, I'm mad. This happened, whatnot. And not at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was actually normal time. And I could not stop laughing. I mean, when he told me what happened, I looked at the other boy, and he's just standing there with a smile on his face. I lost it. I was like, dude, I don't know what to do with this one.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's just too good.
It was
you just got to live with it.
Yes.
You just got to live with it. You got.
Yeah, he got him on that one.
I mean, that's impressive. How old was this kid that thought
they were
16,
in the
17?
No, they were younger than that. They were probably.
Did he come up with it on his own, or
oh yeah,
was he given this information?
No, he was a smart one when it came to those things.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yep, it was good.
I may not let Paige listen to this broadcast so I can actually do that.
Do that one.
Boy, then you'd be reading my obituary. Anyway, that's a good one. Okay, your turn.
So I got to tell one on Sean. Some of them have actually have heard this.
Oh no.
But up until this year at camp, actually Sean was probably was the worst injury that I have had at camp. And so I was on site one year, and that was Sean's first year, his 7th grade year at FUGE. We were in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was on site at a location where I couldn't take my cell phone in because location where I was known for kids taking things out of bags and whatnot. And so I had to leave my cell phone in the van, and I'd periodically go and check on my phone just in case someone called me from another site. And it was about time to pack up. So I went and cranked the van, and I looked at my phone, and I had like 5 missed calls from 4 of them were from the site coordinator. And one of them was from Sean's dad. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And so I listened to my voicemails, and this was one of the times I was not thrilled with the staff of camp, and the way they handled really wasn't as big of a deal as they made it out to be.
They thought it was like World War III breaking out.
I get on the first voicemail is this woman saying, she's saying, I'm here with Sean. He's been hit in the head. He's got blood gushing from his forehead, and we've got the ambulance on the way. We're going to take him to the hospital. I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world has happened? And then the second phone call is, ambulance is here. They're checking him. This. I'm like, okay. So I'm basically tracking with what is happening over voicemail as I'm listening to all these voicemails. Well, then the third message was from Sean's dad, and Sean's dad's like, I've been told that Sean's like bleeding from his head. I'm 7 hours away. I don't know what I need to do. Call me whenever you get this and tell me what I need to do. And then the next message is, okay, the ambulance says that he's okay. We've got the blood stopped. And then the final one is, Sean's okay. We'll meet you at the gate whenever we get back to camp. I'm like, wow, I just went through a range of emotions on 5 voicemails. And I come pulling back in. I come pulling back into camp, and sure enough, Sean had gotten a ride with basically all the leadership of FUGE, and I've got my site group in my van. I pull up, and Sean's literally standing there waiting for me. He's got an ice pack on his forehead, and I get out, and he's just sitting there with this giddy little smile on his face. I'm like, yeah, this just happened. Come to find out, he had basically someone on site with some kind of a bat had swung and misswung and did hit him in the head, it was a fairly serious. I think he had a concussion and was definitely bleeding at first, but it was quite an experience, to say the least, for him and for me and his dad and everybody else involved. And that night, I actually had to take him out of worship because I thought he was going to pass out in the middle of worship from his concussion. Yeah.
So you determined that they was a concussion.
Yeah. I think he definitely had a concussion from that, and but other than that, he was good, and he made it survive.
So here's the real question. Aside from the fact that blood was gushing from his head, and this is what was Sean the kind of kid that when you first heard he got hit in the head, there was one part of you that went, yes.
there was a part, so that was still early on. Of course, I had several years with Sean in Century Kid, and so kind of knew him as kind of the little goofy kid, and would get himself into some things, not necessarily. I don't think purposefully, but would get himself into some things. And there was a part of me that thought, okay, he did something to himself. I did not think somebody would have hit him in the head with a bat. I would have easily thought Sean could have hit himself in the head with a bat. But that was kind of the general range of what I thought had potentially happened.
But he's all grown up now, and he's
all grown up.
Yeah,
head injury made a little bit of difference, but
moved out of that phase.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've got, like I said, we've said this before. I've got lots of different stories, several that I can't share, won't share in a public viewing. If you want to come and talk to me,
well, we appreciate that.
We can have those conversations.
We thank you for your discretion.
But it's always a blast, and I think that's the thing. Going back, even kind of blending these two things together. The first thing that we opened up with, talking about why camp. Yes, we have the opportunities to minister together, and there's so much that comes out of that, and I won't detract from that at all, because that is the purpose and the reason we're there. But there's also so much that happens in the dorms. I mean, at meal times, at church group devotions, just when we're waiting around to go to and fro things, and there's things that even happen. I mean, there's times that I can remember things taking place and relationships being built whenever we're just sitting in line waiting to go into worship and things of those natures. And I think, having those opportunities of bonding and relationships and memories that are made and all of that. And I think life experiences that take place at camp, are just a lot of times you don't see that any other place. It happens in ways that you cannot manufacture anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so, we don't just, one of the things that I hope that our folks understand, and for others out there that are doing, that go to camp, and I know lots of people have different reasons for what camp and all that, but hopefully folks understand that whenever the reason that we do camp and the camps that we do, there's intentionality behind this is why we're doing what we're doing, and what the purpose of that is, and a lot of prayer and thought goes into that, and all of our adult leaders are aware of those things and know going into it. But so much of it is the life lessons that come through and come with camp, being away from home, seeing that there are other believers that are their age, that are their peers, that they're able to go through life. Sometimes our students grow up and they think that they've got this little bubble of Christians that live within the life of our church, but then they go to school and maybe they have a pocket of friends that are believers, but the vast majority who they're there with are not believers. Mm-hmm. It's a different world whenever you go to a camp with 400 kids that are worshiping the same God in the same way, same capacity, and you look around and you're like, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. And I think that's something that's always been really neat to see. I remember periodically I will take we'll take like a senior adult to FUGE with us. And I remember one year we took a lady named Juby. And she went. Sean was on that trip, and Juby, man, she was just a sweet lady, and she had nothing to do with our students in terms of with the student ministry per se, but she always just had a sweet spirit around our students, and
she could make some chocolate cake.
Oh man, she could bake. Oh, she could do it. Yeah, It was awesome, and so she went. I convinced her to go to FUGE one year, and I think she actually went twice with us. But the first year she went, it was very much just, Jason asked me to go, and I'm just being faithful because he needs a chaperone. And I remember having a conversation with her one day whenever we got back, and man, she was on cloud nine whenever we got back from camp, and she stopped me one time and she said, Jason, she said, I just need you to understand this. She said, I went to camp with the expectation and the mindset that I'm going to do everything I can. But I genuinely went to camp thinking there's no hope for this generation of students. Like there's no hope for them.
Right.
They don't love the Lord. They're not going to pursue the Lord. Our generation is falling by the wayside.
Lost,
kind of
selfish,
thing. Yep.
Self-absorbed.
And she came back and she said, Jason, I have never had, just with that one camp alone, she said, I've never had more hope for this generation of students. And again, I've seen that. That's one story of many that I've seen that they see this come out of this and what takes place while we're at camp. So it really is a genuinely. It's not something we do just to fill time. It's not something that we do to go and have a lot of fun, even though we have a ton of fun when we're at camp. It is very intentional, and there's very meaningful purposes behind camp for us.
Yeah, and I would just add this, and maybe this is more so, what I'm about to say is more so for CentriKid rather than Centrifuge or MFuge, but there are parents out there, and I don't sit here and want to presume that I'm going to tell you how to parent your child, but I've been a parent for a while. I've been in ministry for a while, and I've seen the effect that camp and or a missions trip or anything like that can get a kid out of their comfort zone, away from mom and dad. Not that that's the goal, but when you get that, and a lot of parents are like, I'm not gonna, my kid's never been away from me. They have these presumptions like, they're going to get around all these wild kids and crazy things are going to happen, and I'm going to get this wild kid back and all this kind of whatever runs through your head. I just want to prayerfully ask that you would meditate on whether or not this would be a positive thing for your student to be a part of, because I can tell you without reservation that I have seen God move more quickly and more powerfully in the life of a kid because they experienced a week of camp than a couple of years could have affected this kid otherwise. And so don't just dismiss it out of hand. Ask God what he would have you to do, if this would be something that would be beneficial for your student, because it can really impact their lives and the trajectory of their lives henceforth and forevermore.
Yeah. And we always have, there's always the hesitation, the trepidation about sending your kid off to camp and whatnot. And I want to share this. I've shared this with people that have given me these concerns and whatnot. And so I want to share this more publicly a little bit, but there was a year where we were actually going to Charleston, South Carolina. And the year that we were going, we were supposed to go to Charleston, South Carolina for FUGE. It was the year that the shooting happened in Charleston in the church, where the gentleman went in and killed a few there. And literally the week that we were supposed to go to camp was the week after this happened. And so FUGE they Lifeway stepped in and the camp that was there had to shut down that week. And so then the question then became, okay, what do they do with the camp that we're going on? And so, number one, all of our parents were asking that question. We were asking that question. I was trying to communicate with Lifeway, and all this is kind of going on within the week before we're supposed to leave for camp the following Monday. All while we're still praying and thinking through the tragedy that has happened at this church. So we know that for us, it's a minuscule thing that we're going to camp, but there is a serious tragedy in people that have lost their lives and families whose lives have been changed forever because of an incredible tragedy. And so we were walking through all of that as best we could, and I genuinely usually I think we may lose a kid before we actually leave for camp. There's always that happening.
And when you say lose a kid, they're not going to go on the trip.
Right. They end up not. Yeah, we don't lose a kid. Knock on wood. It's never happened
in light of the present conversation.
Yeah. But they'll fall off. They won't go to camp for whatever reason. And that year, I fully expected we were going to have several pull out. And we had a meeting for all of our families and just kind of shared. And Lifeway had already given me the clear, said, we're going to do it. We've been assured by the community and various different things, everything, they've got heightened police and all different things was taking place. And so we had a meeting and I gave all of our families the option and said, all right, guys, look, here's what's happening. They're doing camp. We're going to go. As leadership, we had prayed through going, and whether or not we did, we decided, yes, we're going to go ahead and go. But we gave every family the option and said, but we understand that if you are not comfortable sending your kids to camp this year, we'll give you a full refund. And we didn't have a single family pull out. Not a single student decided not to go. One of the things that one of the parents said to me whenever the meeting was over, and she said, my son's going to go. And she said, as I've prayed through this and thought through this, she said, my kid has just as much of a risk of walking into Walmart and something happening as they do going to this. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. There's always the risk that something could take place. And so we went, the Lord blessed. And one of the crazy things is that whenever nothing happened, nothing else happened, no protesting, none of that happened. It also sparked such incredible conversations on our track sites. One of our groups actually had one of I believe it was a little girl that in the stories of the time, her grandmother had actually laid on top of her during the shooting to protect her, to prevent anything from happening to her. She was actually in one of our kids' sites, and so they had opportunity to meet her, talk to her. On my site, there was actually a moment in time where I was talking to a young man, and we were talking about the idea of the gospel and what the gospel is, and that, we need the gospel because of sin. We need Jesus to save us from sin. And so I asked him, I said, do you know what sin is? And he kind of paused for a minute, and he said, sin's, it's like going into a church and shooting people. I said, yeah, that's sin. But that was what was on all of those folks' mind in that moment, in that time. And so the gospel conversations, the doors that were opened through such a tragedy really were incredible. And so our students walked away from that camp, I think, having experienced something that you don't always get. They saw it in a very real light because we were there following such great tragedy. And yet we were following such great tragedy with such hope, which we find in the gospel. And that's the purpose of what we do when we go to FUGE, and any mission trip for that matter. But we were able to really see that takes place when we go for FUGE. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going for, and the purpose of what we're doing. So, I like to share that. Number one, hopefully it gives comfort and peace in some circumstances, situations. Typically, that's not typical.
Right.
But at the same time, it is such an incredible opportunity that, yes, our students are going to quote unquote camp, but there is also, specifically when we do FUGE, there is real work that is done. There's real ministry that takes place on these sites, where we see students saved, we see kids saved, we see adults saved on site. And so it is real is real gospel work that's taking place.
Very cool.
And I'll add in there too, another big thing that a lot of parents miss or don't see about camp is the opportunity for kind of fringe students to become core students.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like kids who are kind of on the outskirts that aren't plugged in, don't necessarily feel like they fit in, they're not really connected, they might not come to much events and activities, and they go to camp and that changes.
Yeah.
I mean, 180-degree turn. And I've had multiple stories, but one that comes to the top of my head is at our previous church. We had a girl. She had kind of grown up in Lebanon. Her family moved to Kentucky when she was about 7 or 8, and they had been there until she was 16, and they moved back. So majority of her life was in Kentucky. And so she was struggling because she was like, well, I was here, and then I was taken away from this church, and then I developed new friends at a new church, and I was taken away from that church, and she did not want anything to do with student ministry. She was like, I'm 16. I think she was like 16 going on 17. She's like, I got 1 year
Yeah, she's
left.
just riding it out.
Yeah, she's like, there's no point. I'm not going to youth group. Well, her parents came and talked to me, and I said, make her come. Make her come to youth group. Force her to come to activities. I was like, is she going to be angry? Yes. Is she going to say she hates you and can't stand you? Yes. And then it came time for camp, and they talked to me. I said, sign her up, make her go. And so they did, and she went crying and screaming. She was not happy with mom and dad that they made her do this. And that girl came back. So that would have been her junior summer. So she had one more summer of camp left. She came back from that camp and went from the kid who hated coming to student ministry, cried every Wednesday before she came in the building, to being one of my student leaders and never wanting to leave. Like, I would have to tell her, get in your car and go home. Like, I'm ready to go home. Like, me and Cameron aren't staying here until midnight. Like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And so the dramatic change that can take place at camp for those students who aren't connected in is just huge. And like another story on that is like, I remember in this at Lebanon, the same group, I had a mom come to me and she was asking, she's like, Sean, I feel like my son's not really plugged in. He's not connected. And she was kind of pointing out this group of students that were really, really tied together. And she kind of approached it like, I feel like the youth group's cliquey. And I said, no. That group of kids are the ones who went to FUGE, and they went on a mission trip together, and they've come to every summer activity together. And so now they're just bonded. They're just connected. I said, your son hasn't done that. Like, he hasn't come to stuff with us. And so it's not that he's being neglected. It's not that he's being pushed out. It's he's lost the opportunity to connect. And I said, so he needs to come. He went to camp the next summer, and he instantly was part of that group. And so those kids, and I'm talking to parents that are listening, if your student is that's on the fringe, that doesn't necessarily like to come on Wednesday night or Sunday morning, feels awkward, feels quiet, doesn't know how to do that stuff, I know it's hard, but make them go.
Yeah.
Make them come to youth, make them go to events, make them go to camp and strength to stand, because the change that can happen in that stuff is dramatic.
Yeah.
And it can change it totally.
Yep.
That's a good word. Real quick, bring this to a close, but let's look to the future a little bit.
Yep.
What does this look like moving forward? What are the, obviously plans can change and circumstances can change and influence those. But anyway, right now, as we sit here today, what are we thinking about next year?
Yes. So we are headed to Mississippi. We are going to a place called Camp Tanglewood. And what part of Mississippi is it?
I don't know.
I don't either. It's like 6.5 hours away.
Yeah.
So we're going somewhere south.
One of the hot places. I don't know.
And we are going to be doing something a little different. We are going to take next year, and we're going to do centrifuge. I have never myself done centrifuge, even as a camper, as an adult, or as a student minister leading. I've never done centrifuge, so it'd be new for me. But Jason and I kind of spent the week, and we were talking about, while we were at camp, talking about, what does next year look like? And we were just kind of looking, and we decided, I feel like we really need to push for just connection and leadership and maturity in our group, where we can grow together and really begin to develop that core leadership within our group. And that's hard to do at Infuge, so we feel like centrifuge somewhere we can really be purposeful in our kind of discipleship with students and helping them kind of grow in that sense, in that leadership and in that way.
Yeah. So I have only done total, I think this will be my third centrifuge. I've done one as a camper. I've done one as a leader. The last time I did the one as a leader was very similar circumstances to this. We had a large group of students coming in into the youth group, very young, not a lot of seniors, not a lot of juniors. So again, that's kind of where our youth group sits right now for us here at Seymour. And so as we looked at that and just really prayed through, what does that look like? I think this is an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to very intentionally build for the future. And that's the intent behind what we're doing. Again, an intentionality behind camp, not just a, hey, this is what we always do, so let's do this and let's just find a place. There's an intentionality behind this is what we want to do, and we see this as being purposeful for years to come, and developing our students and our student ministry. And so we looked at this location, a lot of fun activities, more so than I think you're going to get on most college campuses.
It looks pretty sweet.
It's I hope they've got that they've got like a big lake or pond or whatever in there, and
with
like the blob thing.
Yeah,
I really hope they let us use that in some.
They got
capacity.
the blob. They've got water basketball, like in the lake. They've got like a basketball court in the lake and a volleyball court in the lake.
Yeah,
like
and there's
in the water.
There's some kind of like I don't know what it's called, but like it's basically like paintball, but with bows and arrows, with like these marshmallow looking things at the ends. I don't know.
Shoot them at each other.
Awesome. So we're excited about what that looks like, and again, the intention behind that is to develop those relationships, to develop up leaders within the group, to continue to develop up leaders in the group, so excited for what that looks like. Centrifuge is not going to be a staple for us. It's not going to be a regular thing.
Right.
It is going to be a one-off every now and then for the intentionality behind it, until we will be back at FUGE, because there's I think that's always been mine and Sean's heart. So that will come back around quickly and will be the more what we do. But Centrifuge for this year is something that I think we both felt this is where the Lord was leading us for our group.
Cool. So can you put you on the spot? Save the date for everybody right now? Yeah,
so the date is 9th through the 13th.
June 9th.
19th through the 13th. Second full week of June.
Okay.
The first full week is VBS. Second full week will be FUGE.
There you go.
Excuse me.
Centrifuge.
See, I don't do it very often.
I know. All right. Well, guys, very good. If you want to know more about this, you're going to hear in an email in just a second. And you can send in an email or just grab one of these guys. If you're a member of Seymour First Baptist Church or you're visiting with us, you want to know more about any of the FUGE camps or in the future or have questions about that, grab them anytime you have an opportunity to do so. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again when we have another one of these in the very near future. So let's tell them bye, fellas.
See ya.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to Seymour from the Front Pew. Our sole desire for this podcast is to glorify God by educating and encouraging His body. If you would like to learn more about anything you've heard today, feel free to reach out by email at staff@seymourfbc.org or by visiting our website at seymourfbc.org. If you're located near our community and do not have a church home, come worship with us at 10:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. Until then, we pray God's richest blessings on you and yours as you love God, love others, make disciples, and live the life.